All right, everybody, can you hear me? Welcome. I've got 10:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invite. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. We have 5 items on our agenda. I'll go ahead and get started with the county manager update and turn it over to Don Boone.
Just kind of giving you a little forewarning that June is going to be a busy month for the board as we get through the budget process, the final stages. And we have a comprehensive plan that will also be in front of your board and a number of other topics. So just little early warning on that. The other things of note is that there are county representatives right now at the Board of Forestry meeting over in Sisters, and a number of community members also. And then as you know, the public comment period for the buyout has been extended. So there's a lot of community discussion about additional comments regarding that that can get in through the public comment window. And then just so your board is aware, the Columbia Inn is still going through some tenant improvement projects. Right now, the floors are being replaced. There's already been some structural work regarding ADA restrooms in some of the rooms. But one of the outstanding issues will be the fire suppression and fire alarm system. And so we're still working through that, through the permitting process. And so we will keep you updated as we work through that process. And Jared, that's all that I have this morning.
All right, thank you, County Manager. Do we have any questions or comments? We'll move on then to the next item, which is the reappointment to Recreational Lands Planning Advisory Committee. We got Steve Meschke, our Natural Resources Manager, with us, and I'll turn it over to Steve.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. Yeah, we're here to talk about just the reappointment of one of our committee members, Brad Caton. He works for Oregon Department of Forestry. He's one of their reforestation unit foresters. He's been on our committee. He's already served 1 term. He's currently chair, and he's asking to be reappointed for another 3-year term. Just have any questions? If you guys have any questions of me, I could answer them for you.
All right, any questions for Steve? Commissioner Webb.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's just a comment. I'm our liaison to this committee, and Brad has been a wonderful addition. He really has. It's having somebody from ODF at the table has just been terrific. And Brad's been a really good chair too. He's really, as I say, he's been great, and new blood and lots of technical expertise about all kinds of different things. And so I would encourage reappointing him. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Appreciate that endorsement.
All right, and then I'll have this on the next agenda on your next board meeting for final approval then.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Steve.
All right, thank you.
We'll move on to our next topic, which is Ordinance 23-08. And this is the Warrenton Urban Growth Boundary Amendment on page 10. And Gail Henriksen, our Community Development Director, is here. I'll turn it over to Gail.
And thank you, Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. So Ordinance 2308 is will be coming in front of your board later this month in order to address a mapping error that's occurred. In 1979, the town of Hammond had included 2 parcels in its urban growth boundary. And in 1991, when the town and the city of Warrenton merged their operations, they drafted a new comprehensive plan, land use regulations, and a new comprehensive land use map. And in the process of adopting that map, they inadvertently left those 2 parcels that were part of Hammond's urban growth boundary off of the map. And so now the city of Warrenton wants to annex one of those parcels. And in order to address this, they have to go back and correct their mapping error. So back in February of this year, the Warrenton Planning Commission reviewed this item, voted to recommend approval of it with conditions. On May 9th, our Planning Commission held a public hearing about this. They also voted unanimously to recommend that your board approve the UGB amendments as presented. And so I just wanted to present this to you today to kind of give you an overview of the request, why we're looking at it, and to explain the process that you'll go through. So once we finish our work session today, you'll see this as two public hearings and an ordinance that will come to your board on June 14th and June 28th. And then following whatever happens at those two meetings, we will forward your board's recommendation back to the city of Warrenton, and then their city council will have the final vote on it. And the reason we're going through a formal amendment, even though it seems like it's just a simple Scrivener's error, is that Department of Land Conservation and Development staff have recommended that we use this formal amendment process simply because so much time has gone by since they adopted their map in 2005. And so this error has been lingering for 18 years and several updates and iterations of everybody's comp plan. So I'm here today simply to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Any questions or comments at this time from the board? Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This seems like the most fundamental of housekeeping issues. I'm not missing anything, am I? Just please reassure me.
It is very much a housekeeping issue. And as I stated, it seems like a simple Scrivener's error that you would just go back and fix the map, because you can see on page 10 and page 13 of your agenda that this was clearly shown on the maps at the time in the 80s that we recognize these as within Hammond's urban growth boundary. But again, since 18 years has passed and this error has gone undetected, we're just making sure that we're cleaning it up in the most appropriate manner possible, so there's no future questions.
I'm a fan of house cleaning. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other comments or questions at this time? Okay, seems fairly straightforward. Appreciate the presentation, Gail. And we'll be bringing this back. Next item is the proposed fee schedule. Adjustments for Clatsop County to be implemented July 1st, 2023, and that's on page 50.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Monica Steele, Assistant County Manager. Every year we bring before you all an updated fee schedule. As you know, the county is always looking for additional revenue streams to help offset our discretionary dollars within the general fund. And so one of those ways is for those private fee for services, making sure that they're covering the true cost of doing the cost of county business. And so for the most part, there aren't a lot of significant changes within this, but I do want to highlight some changes that there are. One of those just includes some consistency in regards to terminology. You know, there's outdated things such as CDs, and now we use USBs. So updating some of that. Previously, we have not included the fairgrounds fee schedule in our fee schedule. And so as a part of our whole document, we have incorporated the costs of different services that the fairgrounds has in the fee schedule as well. Environmental health is where the majority of the significant changes are. And that's because they have recently undergone a significant review that hasn't happened for a number of years under the new leadership of the environmental health supervisor, Lucas Marshall. And so with the work of him and Scott Huddleston, they have increased some for environmental health because they previously were not covering the actual cost for the staff to be going out to all of these businesses such as restaurants, hotels, spas, pools, etc. to do this. And so there are some cost increases there as well as some cost decreases. Another change that is currently showing as being something new on page 61 of your packet that was actually added in 22-23, and it should not be on there. So we will be removing it, even though it shows as being an addition. Is a $100 NSF fee. That is not accurate. Budget and Finance has a $25 NSF fee, and that's the cost of what it is. So we will be removing that NSF charge of $100 on page 61 in your packet. And then I'm available for any other questions you all might have about any of the other proposed changes. And this will be coming before your board, I believe, on June 28th.
Thank you, Assistant County Manager Monica Steele. Do we have any questions or comments? Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious if there has been any community response to these proposed changes.
We have not heard anything to my knowledge. I asked Teresa as the clerk of the board, have you received any comments?
No, we have not received any.
Chair Quillen, members of the board, if I might, real quick.
Yes.
What I would say with the fee schedule, and Monica provided an overview, is that, you know, these are really programs oftentimes that are part of the enterprise fund, part of the organization. And so as an example, with the restaurant inspections, you know, counties do not subsidize that. It really is a fee-driven system. We have been subsidizing that for a number of years. And so this is a program that if the county doesn't provide it, the state does. And so it is truly one of those things that we need to be recouping what those costs are. I did ask staff about the fee increases, and the fees that the board would be adopting are really representative of the fees other counties are also charging for like services. So I just want to make sure that your board is aware of that. So we will be in line with what other counties are also charging for those services.
So you're making them enough.
And if I could have everybody mute there if you're not muted already. I did have one person from the community reach out, happens to be a local attorney, and he has talked with surveyors and some of the other smaller businesses that are worried about the single remote access fee. I think the increase, I think it's a significant increase on a monthly basis. I don't know what it was before. I see Tracy Kremenko, our county clerk, is on, and it was, I think it was significantly less, and now it's $600 per month to have that remote access. Do you have any of that information there, Tracy?
Yes, thank you, commissioners. I had gotten together with Suzanne Johnson, the A&P director, and Jim with IT director, and compared with other counties. What we're doing is actually going to be $300 for access, full access to Pottsville County's clerk records, and then it's additional $300 for full access to A&T records. We have gotten rid of the single lookup fee of the $5 per month with the per click, so to speak, per lookup. And we are developing a public portal where, free of charge, you can access and look up grantee, grantors, and look for your document. You cannot access the actual document. That, of course, we will still have to provide for you, but you have the ability to search for it, which we do not currently have at this moment, other than coming into our office with the public. And I've explained that to this gentleman, and we are going to, I've explained to him that this is what we're going to go for at this time and see how it works out.
So Chair Quilla, if I might again, so I think part of what the story is here is that right now, to really access these records, you need to become a registered user, which requires work on behalf of our IT department, and there's only a limited access. You would have to be one of those registered users to actually access the system. Part of what the goal is to provide the index of all these different records to the general public, so that they will have access to the index of all these records. When they find the record that they want, they just let, in this case, Tracy's staff know. Tracy's staff retrieves the record and then can email it to them. And it's typically a very quick process. There is a fee that goes with that. I think it's $3.75. So what we're actually trying to do is create more transparency with these records and more accessibility to the records without having to burden IT staff with having to actually register computers into the system. So that's part of what the goal is. As Tracy said, we're gonna see how this works, and we can always adjust if we need to based upon feedback. And we are always open to do that. So if we don't get it right this time, we will adjust. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, County Manager. Tracy, you had something additional?
Yes, this was brought to my attention that it was misrepresented in the budget summary or the fee schedule yesterday. So we made the correction yesterday and I presented it. I went to Jill Culver and had the correction done, and it was forwarded on to Teresa. So I was hoping you guys all were able to get that page replaced in your packet that you already had. Apologize for the delay.
Thank you, Tracy. And so there is the additional time spent to look up the record, to scan it, and then to email it to the individual as needed.
The documents are already scanned in for us. So when the person finds the document and they have the document number that they want, they can just call us up, request it. And for $3.75, we will email it directly to them.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. So if I understand correctly, staff in response to community input has redesigned the process to make it more accessible, more affordable, and presumably faster. That's number one. Number two, I would call your attention, colleagues, to the fact that frequently there are bills at the state legislature that would negatively impact the registration of all deeds with the county clerks. So I'm eager, and the legislature has been responsive to those until we have fits and say, no, our county clerks have to be the repository of the registration of all legal documents related to housing, deeds and so on. So I'm eager to keep us responsive, transparent, and affordable, which is what I hear staff has done. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
Commissioner Thompson, that is correct. That is what I was going for, is with more transparency, accessibility to the general public.
And if I might, Chair Coyle, sorry, I'm interrupting so much. That's not typically my style. But I would say also that that we understand this is a change, and we understand changes are always challenging. We have very different users for these systems, and we have title companies and others that are kind of the power users and that are accessing the system all the time. And those are the ones that would pay $300 for either the clerk system and or the the assessment system, and they are in it all the time, and they are grabbing the documents that they need. But really, this is to create a portal for just the everyday users where they can get on, search the files. And so it is a transparency issue. It's an efficiency issue. We're trying to meet all the different needs, but it is hard because there's such a wide spectrum of need when it comes to these public records. I will say part of the consideration also is just how best to use our very limited IT resources and making sure that they're spending their time on the most important parts, which is really ensuring the backbone of our infrastructure from a security and reliability basis. So those are all factors that we've been working through.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager, for the clarification. So it would be the larger title companies and such that would be paying this $600 fee. The smaller users would just be getting access, and then they would get it printed, or they would get it emailed as a single use, or a single, not single use, the lookup access. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think for those single users that are more frequent, they can get a deferred billing. So the clerk's office will just track the documents and just bill them monthly or periodically. And so it's a pretty, we're trying to make it as easy as we can, both for the large power users and for the less frequent users.
Okay, thank you, County Manager. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll be bringing this back.
Yes, Chair, we'll be bringing this back prior to July 1. Again, I believe it's on your June 28th agenda.
Great, thank you, Assistant County Manager. We don't have any other comments on this. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is the Planning Commission applicant interviews on page 77. Commissioner Thompson, did you have?
I just had a point of order, Mr. Chair. Before we begin an extended discussion, if I may, I see that we have two sitting planning commissioners, both of whom have indicated their desire to be reappointed. It hasn't usually, I don't know that we have a written policy about how we do this. My sense of it is that if there is a sitting planning commissioner and absent any other negative considerations, they're sort of automatically reappointed. I wonder if my understanding is correct. And if so, are we diverging from that in that we have sought other applicants? And I would just add that there are currently no members of the Planning Commission from District 5. I'd like to remedy that. On the other hand, I want no disrespect or consternation to be felt by the sitting members of the Planning Commission who have applied for reappointment. So could someone clarify for me how we're proceeding today? Thank you.
So Chair Coelho, if I might, Gail, if I might. So what I would say, Commissioner Thompson and other board members, is that anytime that there is a vacancy on one of the county advisory committees, we see that as an open opportunity for the board to take all applications, including those that might be interested in reappointment. And so that is the board's opportunity to make any decisions that they want to about the composition of any of the advisory committee and boards. And so this is a very typical process. The applicants that are current sitting board members are applying just as new applicants are, and your board will consider the full slate, and based on whatever considerations you feel appropriate, you will come up with a slate of appointees for those vacant positions. I'm happy to answer any questions. So,
Thank you, County Manager. Any other questions? And I know Commissioner Banks, you had your hand up, but did you have anything you wanted to say?
I guess my perspective is a little bit different, but it was mainly just along the lines of, if it's broke, don't try to fix it. And I feel like our planning commission is working really well. But I appreciate Commissioner Thompson's, in-depth reflection there, and county manager's thoughts also. So I just had a little bit more of a simplistic perspective. Anyhow, that was it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Banks. So we have scheduled this time for interviews, and we have several of the applicants that have joined us. Commissioner Webb, I see you have your hand up before we get started. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah. I think that given the bit of confusion that happened the last time we made appointments to the Planning Commission, I feel a little guilty if we are going to go ahead and let the two people who have applied re-upping. And I support Commissioner Banks's, if it ain't broke, to, leave it alone. I think, and it's really wonderful that we've got all these applicants, but I wonder if we're not wasting their time in asking them to be interviewed if we don't have any inclination to actually substitute new members. I just think it's a matter of respect for the people who have applied and have shown up today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I agree with what both of my colleagues have said in terms of it's not broken, don't fix it. From my point of view as District 5 Commissioner, you will remember District 5 is over half the landmass of the county. So in the sense of, is it broken if there isn't someone representing at least the point of view and experience of that part of the county on a very direct basis? In my mind, that would constitute a sense of being broken. Now, we don't control who applies and when. So it's a bit of, we applied the best people we saw, and there was no one from District 5 who applied before. So I understand that. If I sat on the Planning Commission, it was a challenging and rewarding experience. I'm grateful for the time and energy and intelligence and heart and skill that every member of the Planning Commission has shown in how they've done their work, because I agree with Commissioner Banks and Commissioner Webb that our current Planning Commission functions well. But as I look at it, if we look on page 78 of our packet, we don't have anybody from District 1. Commissioner Aquila isn't complaining about that, but I have two potentials who wish to be considered from District 5. And I see that there are Chris Ferraris from District 3, Carrie Johnson up for reappointment from District 4, Jason Krushauer from District 2 up for reappointment, Jeremy Linder from District 4, Michael Magyar from District 4, Clark Powers from District 2, Katie Pritchard from District 3. So we have some districts represented and not others. And in my mind, that is a sense of broken, but I agree with Commissioner Webb that we want to show respect for the time of the people who've come. So we don't take votes in work sessions, but I'm curious about what our feeling is going forward about if we are willing to replace well-functioning sitting commissioners in order to achieve a better geographic balance, because that's how I see the issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Do we have any other comments or questions at this time? We have slated this for interviews. We have a couple questions that Gail has emailed to all of us. And we have Commissioner Toyoka.
Thank you. It's just, had a question, because I tried to look it up. Is there an actual protocol that we have to follow within the county on this issue? So we can't randomly decide to have or have not, interviews, but then on the other token, do we need to interview those who are sitting board members who reapply? Since we already know them, we've, either seen the meetings or watched them on audio or video that, so we know what they are doing in the meetings themselves. Is there any protocol for that as well? Is there an established process?
I'll let our Community Development Director or County Manager field that one.
I'm looking at Gail, but I'll be happy to field that one. What I would say, Commissioner Toyoka, is that it's really at the full discretion of the board about how you want to proceed with the process. I've seen it over my many years, very different ways. Sometimes there's no interview and a board just confers and makes an appointment. There are times like last time where we did interviews, and based upon those interviews, there was conference and then appointments. And in this case, certainly your board has the discretion to interview all candidates or to interview only new applicants. You could decide not to interview and to just appoint. All that is, there are no hard and fast rules because every appointment process is a little unique, and it's unique based upon, how a advisory committee or board is functioning. It's based upon the number of applicants. It's based, as Commissioner Thompson mentioned, based upon the geography of the applicants. And so it's really intended to be a flexible process that serves the board. And I know that flexible process can be frustrating at times, but it's also that way so that the process can reflect what the board's values are. And so it's really at your discretion. There's no hard and fast rule about how these processes go. Your board ultimately is the decision maker, and you just have to feel comfortable with that process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, County Manager. Commissioner Banks.
So moving forward into whatever we choose to do here in the next 5 minutes, I think the only thing that I'm reflecting on is that our board has set some goals, and those goals being moving through code to identify constrictions and restraints to economic development, and helping to put our housing crisis closer to resolution. And so as I look at the two appointees that we have, both of those, if I remember correctly, are our construction professionals. And I would really hesitate as we are moving forward into this conversation and moving through our code to hopefully make things simpler for construction and economics. I would really hesitate to replace either of those positions without somebody who also is a construction specialist. But those are just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I apologize. My NOAA regular warning is going to go off in the back. I guess I should just unplug it, but it's battery operated, so you'd hear it anyway. Sorry. Here's what I'd say. I agree with Commissioner Banks about what we're moving into. One of the applicants who is from District 5 is Nancy Chase, who has a considerable resume in development, particularly in Clatsop County. She has a background also as having staffed planning commissions. I think her comprehension of the role and the reality on the ground is adequate. I don't think it has to be a construction person to meet the goals that Commissioner Banks referenced. Further, I would say, I don't want to get into that North County, South County thing, but I am unable to vote for a planning commission that has the opportunity to have a balanced representation that includes a representative from District 5 and a board that chooses not to do so. Colleagues, with the greatest respect and affection, I will be unable to join you in a positive vote unless we are willing to consider a District 5 applicant for this planning commission going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other comments, questions? So again, we have scheduled this time for interviews of planning commission candidates. I've heard some comments that folks question whether we should go through with that. How do we all feel as a group? Do we want to continue with the interviews at this time? Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Thumbs down, Commissioner Webb, Commissioner Banks. Okay. I think,
I want to honor Commissioner Thompson's
yeah, I think,
request
yeah,
to
I agree.
converse about this.
And I do. I think we should go forward with our interviews. And we have 2 questions. If it's okay with the group, I can go ahead and just read the questions as we go down the list here. And I know Nancy Chase, you just, Commissioner Thompson was just referencing you. You're from District 5. And I'm going to go ahead and just ask you the questions, and you can feel free to provide your answers and responses. Why are you interested in serving on the Planning Commission, and what is your understanding of the legal role of the Planning Commission, financial conflicts of interest, and ethical requirements of the position? Nancy.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Great.
Yes.
So I've been a part-time owner in Clatsop County for 30 years. And I've realized I'm emotionally more tied to Clatsop County than my other home in Portland. And so during COVID, it allowed me to start transitioning to my Cove Beach house and get more involved in local issues. I'm trying to remember all the parts of your question, but I do feel if, I have a lot of planning background. I know how exciting or unexciting planning commission meetings can be. So I have a realistic point of view. I've been on both sides of the zoning counter, and I have done a cluster development. I've done minor partitions. I've managed those as for developers on the other end. And I just feel I would have some insights to give. Also background as a retail business owner. I started a daycare, and I also have a rental near a daycare. So I have a clear understanding of the pluses and minuses. So I feel like I could add to the Planning Commission. I just wanted to offer the opportunity to put me to work here.
Okay.
Regarding conflicts, I guess if I felt there was one, I would seek advice from Ms. Hendrickson and counsel if needed.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Next question, Nancy, would be, how would you define and support ecologically sustainable economic development?
Well, I have, as a developer of my lots, I have worked to preserve trees, put deed restrictions on, conservation easements, but it's a case by case. What do the neighbors need? What does the owner need? What is the pros and cons, and what's the cost benefit? But really, I think sustainability is the future of our planet. So I would totally be looking at ways to achieve that.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Next was Denise Davis. She's also from District 5. Denise, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Why are you interested in serving on the Planning Commission? And what is your understanding of the legal role of the Planning Commission, any financial conflicts, and ethical requirements of the position?
Thank you for your question. Over the last couple of years, I've been closely involved in what's often thought to be an important land use issue in Clatsop County. And during the course of the many meetings and the time involved, I've learned a lot about the history and the context of certain aspects of land use in the county. And this experience has compelled me to become more involved in the actual planning and land use recommendations for our county's decision makers. And so it's for this essential reason that I bring my interest in serving the county in this regard as a planning commissioner. You've asked also about I'm sorry, while it is the second time I did hear the question,
Yeah.
I think I don't have all, I think there are 3 parts there.
There is. It's financial conflicts of interest and ethical requirements of the position.
Okay, very good. Thank you. In terms of financial conflicts of interest, I have none. I have no financial stake in any particular decision regarding development or land use. And so the county can count on my objectivity in land use recommendations that I would make to your board. having no financial benefit from those development decisions. And in terms of I'm so sorry. Commissioner Cuella, could you please, there's one more aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the ethical requirements of the position?
Yes. Mhm. Excellent. Yes. So in terms of the ethical requirements of the position, I would bring clear objectivity and making decisions that are on par with the goals of the county and of the county's constituents, residents, and voters. And so that's what I would bring to the position. And of course, if there were any questions about ethics or conflicts of interest, I would certainly speak with Director Henriksen or others who would be able to guide me.
Thank you, Denise. How would you define and support ecologically sustainable economic development?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Economic development is certainly a goal for our county, and of course, in supporting it and in making land use recommendations, I would certainly consider what the land is most useful for, the type and extent of impact that any kind of development will have on the land and its surroundings. Just really carefully consider with an eye toward balance. I care about the natural beauty of our county and the need to protect what makes this area special. And I want to see that it be protected for many generations while achieving the balance of supporting economic development. I see that protecting natural resources and really taking advantage of existing infrastructure, those are important components in considering how growth should be concentrated in particular areas, perhaps urban or suburban areas, as much as possible, keeping an eye on the idea that existing infrastructure will help us be fiscally responsible as well, so that we wouldn't have to create or grow additional infrastructure.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your answers. We'll move on to Frank Mansfield. Frank?
I got to get everything turned on here.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, my name is Dr. Frank Mansfield. Okay, I'm an aerospace engineer, if you want to know right up front. So go ahead and ask your question.
All right. Why are you interested in serving on the Planning Commission, and what is your understanding of the legal role of the Planning Commission, any financial conflicts of interest, or any ethical requirements of the position? And I'm happy to read it over if you need me to.
Yeah. Okay, I've been trying to jot it down as everybody else has been doing that every time you read it. Okay, I don't have any, I own property, obviously a house over there in Willett Lane, but I don't have any financial interest in any other particular business in the county whatsoever. So I won't have that. If something would to come up, I would obviously recuse myself in the vote, whether for approval or disapproval of the thing. I mean, I could discuss it, but I will, disapprove that. From my understanding of the Planning Commission, based on my experience of being on the Board of Appeals for property rights appeals, but is that the Planning Commission is responsible for providing to examine what's being brought before them, to figure out the pros and cons of it, the effect on other people besides the person that's applying for it, and to provide a recommendation to the county, whether for approval or disapproval. That's their thing. I do believe, at least there was in ours before in another city, is that you also have to provide a comprehensive land use plan. Do you have to still do that here in this state? Every so many years? So you're responsible for developing that. Okay, there was another part. Okay. What was it?
I think it was any ethical requirements of the position.
Do I have ethical conflicts? Is that what you're asking?
Well, there's the part about the legal role of the Planning Commission, the financial conflicts of interest, and any ethical requirements of the position.
I don't understand that question because I don't think you're saying, is there ethical requirements to be a member on the planning commission? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
If there is, I'm not required, I'm not aware of those, except for was placed in the announcement that we signed, that form that we signed, and which I'm more than willing to abide by because I signed that.
The roles and responsibilities. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Frank. The next question is, how would you define and support ecologically sustainable economic development?
Well, obviously that's a complex issue. You have individual property rights that you have to deal with. You have environmental issues that you have to deal with, whether it's going to cause harm to the environment that it should not necessarily have to cause. Obviously there's technology things that we can do to compensate for that. But my biggest thing is that we have to sit there and minimize the environmental impact, but also keep in mind up front the property rights of the person that's trying to do whatever it is they're doing, but also the effect on the property rights of the people around them. Okay, so I believe we also should manage our environment for sustainability. That's really the bottom line. Okay, and there's a variety of ways of doing that: technology ways, physical ways, etc. Okay. Is there another part to the question?
That's it. That sounds good. Thank you, Frank.
Uh-huh.
And next would be Andrew Richards. Andrew, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Can I have a quick question before I get started here?
Sure.
Noting that we have two existing commissioners representing incorporated districts, as another individual from an incorporated district, is there any, would that be an automatic, am I automatically disqualified to be applying for the open seats?
I think it would be fair for me to say that we'd prefer to have folks represented throughout unincorporated and incorporated. But I don't believe that that's a disqualifier necessarily. I'd let Gail or Dawn maybe if they want to answer that.
I can address that question, Chair. So under the Planning Commission bylaws, we have restricted ourselves to 2 planning members who are from incorporated areas. And currently you do have Katie Pritchard and Chris Farrar, who are both residing in Astoria. It's completely at your board's discretion as to whether or not one of those members should be removed and replaced with a different incorporated member. So you have that ability and discretion. Additionally, you could request that the bylaws be rewritten to incorporate or to allow more representatives from incorporated areas. But then again, you would want to make sure you're still balancing that with representation from the unincorporated areas as well. So the bottom line is really it's at your board's discretion.
Yeah, thank you, Gail, for that clarification. It is a bylaw, so we would more than likely have to replace someone to bring somebody in from an incorporated area. Any other comments, questions? Okay, Andrew, I'll go ahead and ask you the first one, and it is a lengthy one. Why are you interested in serving on the Planning Commission, and what is your understanding of the legal role of the Planning Commission, financial conflicts of interest, and ethical requirements?
Okay. First, my interests as a member of the county or community member of the county. I'm looking and recently moving to the county after a bit back and forth over the last decade. I'm wanting to contribute to the community first and foremost. I've also been a property owner, a landlord, and am now a renter. So experienced a variety of housing situations, with housing being a large priority for the county. So between that and community involvement, service, those are my key motivators as to why I'm here today. For conflicts, I would say I have none. As I've stated, I don't have any interest in, or I don't have any interest in property right now, or financial investments or anything to gain from what might be perceived as a conflict. And ethical requirements, I mean, my perspective was just like any public servant, bringing full transparency and objectivity to the role, and openly communicating with all stakeholders and other members of the commission to ensure transparency and high ethical standards.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Next question is, how would you define and support ecologically sustainable economic development?
I think first and foremost is just trying to make sure all stakeholders in a decision-making process are at the table and heard from when it comes to ecological and sustainable development. I'm an active member of the group called Sustainable Northwest, which works with communities across Oregon and Washington to balance jobs, ecological impacts, and environmental impacts within communities in reference to development and natural resources. Also a member of the Columbia River Land Trust, which looks at, as most land trusts do, securing land for environmental stewardship reasons. And I think both of these groups represent my ethics and my perspective and my stance on balancing ecological development. Again, going back to just trying to ensure all stakeholders are involved and really looking at the holistic picture of the pros and cons of a situation and how it will affect residents and the environment in Clatsop County. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. And my understanding is Michael Skehan has withdrawn his application. That concludes the interviews with the new Planning Commission applicants. It would be my opinion that we would go ahead and conclude the interviews at this time, unless anyone has an objection to that. Okay. What is our next steps, Gail?
So the next steps for your board, there will be a work session item on this on the next Planning Commission agenda, which will be June 14th. And then we would schedule formal appointments from your board on June 28th.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gail. And thank you everybody for joining us and taking time out of your morning to provide us an insight on what is important to you and why you're interested in the Planning Commission. I really appreciate your willingness to apply and to be involved. And as Gail outlined, we'll have a couple more meetings to consider these appointments. So thanks again for joining us. We don't have anything else on the agenda today. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Okay, if not, we'll go and conclude our work session. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good rest of your Wednesday.